Hey everybody, this is James P. Wagner here again in the back office of the Dog-Eared Bard's bookshop, my bookshop where I'm doing another one of my business book reviews, which as you probably know by now, just a little series I like to do about business books, personal finance books, things like that. I've read a lot of those as a business owner myself, and a business judge for, New York State DECA and things like that. So this is just something that I like to do to let people know about the business books that I recommend that they read. So the one I got for you today is The Richest Man in Babylon. Now, this is actually a very unique book in the sense that it didn't originate as a book. It actually originated as a series of pamphlets that were actually given out and distributed for free at banks in the early to mid 1920s. Actually, George S. Clason was very heavily involved in the financial institution back then. He wrote a lot of these little stories and parables that were handed out of these banks to people basically just to kind of teach them the basics of money and saving money and investing money and all that stuff. And then eventually they became so popular, millions of them were distributed. So they kind of sewed them all together and edited them to make them into like a second cousin to a book, pretty much was the origin of that, which I find is pretty interesting. So like I said, these were written in the 1920s, all the stories that are involved in this book, and they're all kind of told in the form of parables, where it's basically like the main character is somebody named Arkad, and he lived in Babylon. And so in these stories, there's usually a problem or something that a bunch of the citizens of Babylon are facing, and they go and they talk to this guy about it because he's the richest man in Babylon. And then he kind of goes through all the various ways that he became rich, where he talks about things like the 7 cures for a lean purse. Some of the concepts that we still hold true today, like take 10% of your income and set it aside to invest, how to, protect yourself from losses, and how, money that just sits there and isn't invested in anything never actually grows and will just be taken away. A lot of things that, were kind of, I wouldn't say new concepts at the time, but they were kind of new in terms of the sense that they were distributed widely at the time. But we hear these all the time today in business books and things like that. But a lot of them came from, this kind of source material. And, the fact that it's told in these stories, and, it sort of kind of reminds me of the philosophical dialogues, like Plato's Republic or things like that, where it's like people are, kind of dialoguing or telling stories to kind of get the point across. So the stories are basically just like, thinly veiled there to kind of get the message, but in an entertaining way, which is why they did that. But yeah, people are going to say off the top of the head, this is 100 years ago, the early 1920s. That's a century old. Why is this stuff still going to apply today? Well, the truth is, it's obviously it's a little bit dated. But I think part of the point of the reason he was telling this in terms of using 4,000-year-old Babylon as an example for all these things was actually that kind of in and of itself drives the point home that these basic principles of wealth building are things that no matter how much the world has changed, still kind of apply. And truthfully, a lot of it still does apply today. Just the general idea of compounding effects, the ideas about income, expenditure, how to amass wealth, because obviously your income needs to be greater than your expenditure. You need to put some money away that you can invest it to kind of grow your nest egg. Don't spend frivolously. Like, these are things that they're not exactly, they don't sound like, oh, that's a great new idea that we've never heard before, but they're core principles of wealth building. And this story, this book in particular is really, really good at going through those basics. And the thing is, some of the stuff you might have heard before, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again, doesn't hurt to hear it in a different way that is being told to you, because sometimes you need to hear the same lessons multiple times before they really stick, or you need to see them presented in a way that hasn't been presented before to kind of really make that click and really get it. So at the very least, this book is a very good foundation. I just find the story behind how this book came to be in and of itself. The idea was originally just little information pamphlets spread around at banks, and it became, one of the the classic books about financial discipline and things like that. I just find that story interesting in and of itself, so that's one of the reasons I like this. But it is a good read. It's not a very long read because, again, these all came from small pamphlets. You could probably get through this book in a couple of hours if you're really dedicated. If you're going to read it, sparingly through the day, maybe a couple of days. All depends on how fast of a reader you are. But it's not a very long read. It's a pretty thin book, and the stories are also cut up in a nice neat way. So if you like short stories in a way. But yeah, definitely some good principles to go over in here. Interesting backstory, and despite the fact it's 100 years ago, still pretty relevant today. So definitely recommend checking it out. That's The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. So hopefully you like it, and we'll see you next time for the next business book review. Take care.